charges, final government finance statements, updated Appendix B, updated Appendix G. Item 19, we've got an urgent update around Heathlands, and one for Lids. For item 22, we've got an urgent update on the NPPF submission. Are those agreed for inclusion? Yes, brilliant. Item 3 is a notification of visiting members. I can see two. Would you like to come and say hello and tell me what you'd like to speak on?
Councillor Jones, Boxy Downs Ward, speaking to item 20.
Thank you.
Good evening, Councillor Povey. I'd like to, I've come to ask a question, but if I can also speak on item 19, that would be much appreciated.
Yep, certainly. Item 4, disclosures by members and officers. Are there any disclosures by members and officers? Councillor Thompson, disclosures by members and officers, please. Are you going to make a disclosure? Thank you. Councillor English.
I declare as Chairman of Detling Parish Council, we did submit comments as a parish council to the SPDs, but those comments were not written by me, and I do not have a significant interest. But for the public record, I think I should clarify that we did submit comments on as a parish council on those documents.
Thank you, Councillor English. Item 5, are there any disclosures of lobbying? Councillor Thompson.
I am pleased to disclose that I have been frequently lobbied on items 19, 20 and 21.
Thank you. Councillor Sumsgood, I see your hand go up. No lobbying. No, I've been lobbied on 19 and 20 as well. Okay. Item 6. I move that all items be taken in public. Is that agreed? Item 7. I move that the minutes of the meeting held on the 28th of January be approved as a correct record and signed. Is that agreed? Item 8. There are no petitions. Item 9. There is one question from a local resident, or two? One question from a local resident. Lots of speakers. I believe that is you, Kate. Would you like to come up? You know what to do.
Thank you. What value do you place on consultation responses from statutory consultees?
Thank you. Councillor Harwood.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you for the question. Maidstone Borough Council, of course, values all consultation responses, as the comments received help to ensure that our documents are robust. Statutory consultee responses are treated in the same way as all other responses. In respect of the supplementary planning documents for both Lidsing and Heathlands, representations have been considered and comments have been assessed by the local planning authority, with the responses provided as required and in line with the Local Plan Regulations 2012, Part 5, Regulation 12. These are contained within the consultation statements for each supplementary planning document, which have been made publicly available. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harwood. Kate, do you have a supplementary arising from either your original question or the answer you were given?
I do. Kent County Council is one of the most important statutory consultees. States that in the current form, the Heathlands SPD does not provide the level of information needed. Why are you ignoring KCC's genuine concerns?
Thank you. Thank you for that question. As you're aware, Kent County Council have been involved throughout the supplementary planning document process, which was required by the local plan review inspector, and therefore they have participated in the evolution of that document. Similarly, parallel meetings have been taking place between planning officers and Kent County Council throughout this process. The issues that have been raised within the letter largely relate to issues that will be dealt with at the planning applications stage rather than the supplementary planning document, where the areas that the SPD can have an input is quite narrow and was stipulated to a very detailed level by the hearing inspector. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Okay, item 10, there is one question from Councillor Povey, again to you, Councillor Harwood. Steve, if you'd like to come up.
Thank you and good evening, Cabinet. Yeah, my question is, what criteria have the Cabinet set that need to be met before adoption of the Heathlands SPD?
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Councillor Povey. The planning inspector for the local plan review required the council to prepare a supplementary planning document for Heathlands. The Cabinet needs to ensure that the SPD has been prepared and provides clear guidance for the future planning applicants. Together, the local plan review policy and the SPD provide the strategic framework for this future decision making. The SPDs need to meet statutory requirements set out in the Town and Country Planning, Local Planning England Regulations 2012, Part 5. These have been met, so this therefore allows Cabinet to proceed to adoption. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harwood. Councillor Povey, do you have supplementary arising from either the original question or the answer you received?
I do. How should a Cabinet member measure the SPD as being suitable for adoption before voting to avoid making a purely subjective decision?
The document has been prepared following a series of meetings with statutory consultees and with other stakeholders. There has also been a steering group with participants drawn from the local community and other stakeholders, which has had sight of the evolution of that document right from square one. And I just want to reiterate the point that the areas the supplementary planning document can cover are set out very clearly by the local plan review inspector, and we cannot deviate from that. And the supplementary planning documents have very specific parameters, and they are essentially building upon the framework set in the local plan review. We cannot revisit some of the larger strategic issues, I think, which are concerning many local residents and yourself, but that, I'm afraid, is the nature of the beast. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harwood.
Thank you, Cabinet.
Councillor Povey. Item 11, matters referred to the Cabinet by another committee. There are none. Item 12 is issues arriving from overview and scrutiny. There are none. Item 13, matters referred to the Cabinet by another committee. There are recommendations from overview and scrutiny detailed on the summary of committee feedback, which was, I think, the urgent item. Item 14, there are no matters relating to a serious service failure or nuisance. Item 15, there are no receipts of written representations from members of the council. Item 16, the forward plan. Do any members have Any comments on the forward plan? I see no indication. So I move that the forward plan be noted. Is this noted? Seconded. Thank you. Item 17, medium-term financial strategy and final saving programmes and capital programme. Councillor Summerskill, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. This report and the related reports that go to Council on 25th of February will represent the final stages in setting our budget for next year. Budget proposals were considered by the three PACs and by Overview and Scrutiny Committee in January initially. No changes were proposed in the January meetings or at CTCS PAC last week to the budget proposals, but there were some updates which were set out to the Overview and Scrutiny meeting on Monday. Changes to reserves in utilisation and fees and charges listing which hadn't been approved before. They were all passed again at ONS on Monday. I can give details of the reserves utilisation if anybody requests it. The proposals now set out will allow the Council to set a balanced budget for 2026-27. However, one major change occurred since Monday is covered in your urgent update folder. The central government relates to a late change in central government funding to all district councils throughout England. The final settlement was published on Monday, 9th of February, and differs from the draft settlement that we received in December when we were setting the budget. It addresses feedback that the government received about how it reflects council's income from local business rates pooling arrangements. And the effect of this change is to reduce the amount of revenue support grant receivable by this council over the first 2 years of the finance settlement period. However, the government on Monday has provided a one-off adjustment support grant for the coming year, which exactly offsets the reduction in the revenue support grant of £813,000 that we were going to have taken away, meaning there's no change to the overall position for the 2026-27. The reduction in grant for 2027-28 will, however, create an increased budget provision of 400,000 deficit in that next year, which we'll have to deal with next year's budget. There has also, from central government, been some changes to homelessness, rough sleeping and domestic grants, which have gone up £91,000 this year and £44,000 next year. The details of all those have been changed in the actual papers, and they're in the urgent update that we have. So the total impact of that summary is the overall impact of Maidstone Borough Council's budget is an additional £9 or 3% increase for Bandy council taxpayers in Maidstone. And in total for their overall council taxes, taking account of precepts and Kent County Council, fire and police and parishes, the increase in Bandy council tax for residents will be £96.27, 4.1% this year. Various recommendations are set out for discussion and approval, but specifically they include a transfer to the Housing Investment Fund of 8 million to add to the 12 million we've already assigned there the last 3 years, and the allocation of earmarked reserves that I mentioned before. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Summerskill. Mr. Green, did you want to add anything to that?
I've nothing to add to that.
Excellent, thank you. Councillor Summers, I assume you're proposing per the papers, are you, in terms of that? And I saw Clive's hand go up. Are you seconding? Would you like to speak as well? And then I've got Councillor Wales. Go first.
It was slightly unfortunate that the government realised at the end of last week that they couldn't actually do basic arithmetic, but that fortunately the pushback was so robust that they found a very large sofa with an extremely large collection of half crowns down the back of it, so that was fortunate. Leaving aside such unexpected events. This has been a budget process that, like all of Maidstone's recent budget processes, has been looked at exhaustively. And I think we can be proud as a council that that's been true under both Liberal Democrat, Coalition and Conservative-led administrations. We've been prudent, we've been sensible, and that's a cross-party approach endorsed, generally speaking, over years by the vast majority of members of this council. So I think we can be proud of that as members and officers, that we have this exhaustive approach. Whether it holds up at a council meeting in a few weeks' time, who knows? But so far it's been a model of forethought and consideration. And what I think we see here is a practical, pragmatic, but also very ambitious in a reasonable way budget that brings forward proposals, both revenue and capital, which will ensure that if we are in the last years of the existence of this hallowed corporation, that we will go out with a, shall we say, appropriate level of pride in our accomplishments. So I'm happy to second this budget proposal.
Thank you, Councillor English. Very well said, and I fully agree with everything you put there. Councillor Wales.
Thank you very much, Chair. One of the biggest costs and one of the biggest blights, I would argue, on our society has been the cost of temporary accommodation, and I'm very pleased to say that I want to draw members' attention to the fact that we're able to reduce the budget by 174,000 this year, 149,000 next year, thanks to the hard work of officers and thanks to the policies that we've been pursuing on purchasing property and maintaining it, which is why the revenue budget has gone up on maintaining properties. Also on the capital side, I'm very proud to be part of a council that is prepared to spend money on house building, home building and recreating lives. So I commend this budget.
Thank you, Councillor Wales. Can't see anyone else indicating. I think this is the 7th time it's come to committee this year in various guises. It's had an awful lot of pouring over, as Clive's mentioned. So I can't imagine there's going to be much more discussion. Is the budget agree, or the proposal agreed to go to recommend to full council? Excellent, thank you. Oh, I'm introducing the next one, I see. Excellent. So item 18 is the Year 2 Action Plan and key performance indicators. This is where I regret not looking at the papers and being given a nice crib sheet beforehand. However, we have I've done this a few times now. As members know, we've obviously had a fair amount of run-up and practice at this. We have got a very robust corporate strategy. This will be year 2 of the delivery of the corporate strategy. We've been in full agreement over the range of items we want to do, and indeed we've been able to expand that this year, which has been an absolute pleasure to do. So we are going to really make an even bigger difference to Maidstone in 26-27. I'm not sure there's much else I can really say than that. No, thank you, Mrs. Woodhouse. So I move that it's full council that agrees it, isn't it? Yes. So I move that we recommend this to full council for agreement. Is there a seconder? Simon got there first. Stephen, you'll have to be faster next time. And there's no Clive, so you know I don't know. Okay. Would anyone like to speak on this item at all? No? Okay. In that case, are we agreed? Excellent. Item 18. Item 19. So item 19 is the Heathlands Garden Settlement Supplementary Planning Documents. Before the report is introduced, we have 2 public speakers. Each will have 3 minutes to address the committee. Right. So, two public speakers, Sarah Emberson and Spencer Dixon. Sarah, would you like to come first? And you have 3 minutes to address the committee.
Okay. Thank you, Chairman, for allowing me the opportunity to speak to you all this evening. I am the Kent County Councillor for Maidstone Rural East, and as I highlighted to the PAC last week, there remain serious concerns about the Heathlands proposal and the accompanying SPD. Barring segregated cycle lanes, which was agreed last week, none of these concerns have been addressed, so I will raise them again. The SPD still fails to show that this scheme is viable, deliverable or sustainable. Indeed, it raises more questions for residents and increases uncertainty. Key concerns include lack of confirmed infrastructure, no commitment from Network Rail on a station has been received, no clarity on rail services, limited detail on healthcare, and little information on water supply, waste management or foul water treatment in a county already facing water shortages. Inadequate transport and service planning, no full traffic assessment, delayed bus services, vague school and nursery plans, and no meaningful provision for older residents. No costed plan, no updated viability report, unclear land availability, and no certainty around developer contributions. A project of this scale cannot rely on assumptions. Insufficient transparency. With the Council acting as both promoter and planning authority, the SPD does not provide clear evidence or commitments. Missing design code and sustainability strategy. There is no clear picture of how layout, the density, open spaces, transport and landscape will work together. Unproven employment claims. The projected 5,000 jobs have no credible delivery plan in a rural area. In conclusion, in its current form, the SPD does not deliver a reliable or deliverable framework for a development of this scale. Residents deserve certainty, clarity and honesty about what this scheme will actually deliver. Thank you.
Thank you. Spencer, would you like to address the Cabinet? Again, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you very much, Chair and members, for allowing me time to speak here again. So, as I raised before, one of my main concerns is with the Chapel Hill site. I did receive an email from a Leslie Feeks, who was the leader of the now defunct Lenham Archaeology Group, and he highlighted again that we're potentially going to overlook a very significant site of historical importance. Once again, I urge the members to consider this site and insist upon the proper procedures before they allow the developers to build over this site and potentially lose a piece of our history forever. The suggestion is that this site could be part of an old Roman town. And if that's even a remote possibility, it does need to be investigated. I think as not just, I've lived in Maidstone all my life, one of the best things about Maidstone is its history, I'm sure we'll all agree. And it just seems odd to me that we're sort of glazing over this. So I do want to bring up one thing that you might have all seen from the letter that KCC sent over today, just to highlight how significant this is. So the County Council feel the need to stress the importance of the archaeology indicated by the geophysical survey of Chapel Hill. This Chapel Hill site needs to be appropriately assessed to inform the master plan, and the approach needs to be transparent and robust. There is a risk that the County Council will have to consider objecting to any application coming forward if targeted trial trenching is not done to inform the parameters of the outline application. I really don't think it can be overstated again how important this site could be, and that once it's gone, we're never going to get that back. It's worth at least having a look. So I think I've made my point on that. Again, with regards to railway station, I just request to see some assurances that we will get the railway station that has been hinted at. We cannot simply go ahead and build 5,000 houses based on the hope or promise of a station. The residents would not look back kindly on the people that failed to protect their interests. So please consider these points tonight. This is not something that we want to look back on with a guilty conscience. Thank you very much.
Before you go, can I just clarify, are you speaking as a division councillor or as the deputy cabinet member?
So speaking as a ward councillor, though I have 30 seconds left, I would like to clarify as well something that came up last time. It was said that the relevant highways authorities have okayed the documents before they went out to consultations. They've been before KCC officers. We just want to clarify on this, that the highways officers have not okayed the SPDs. So,
but you
as
just,
a board member.
We can pick that up later, but you just confused two issues there. But thank you very much, Mr. Dixon. Okay, so now we have Councillor Harwood to introduce the report with officers, and then I will ask visiting members, just one, isn't it? I can't see him now. There he is. Then we'll ask you to speak, and then we'll have a debate. Councillor Harwood, would you like to introduce the report?
Thank you, Chairman. In a way, I've already introduced the report with the questions earlier on that the local plan review inspector required the council to prepare a supplementary planning document for the Heathlands Garden settlement. We have done that, and we have delivered that with representatives of the local communities affected and with key stakeholders, and we have gone through the consultation process, and we have assessed the consultation responses and incorporated them in the document before you. However, it's probably worth flagging up that we've also got an urgent update that's before us, which incorporates some additional changes, which we need to take into account when we move the motion. And essentially, the recommendation is at the bottom of page 176. The Heathlands Garden Settlement SPD is supported by the Transport Annex Landscape Strategy and Statement of Consultation, plus the urgent update, will be adopted, and delegated authority be given to the Head of Planning and Economic Development to make minor graphic, layout or editorial amendments prior to final publication. And just as a postscript, a lot of the issues that have been coming up time and time again are not germane to supplementary planning documents. I think that's the nub of the issue. Supplementary planning documents have a very specific role in shaping the planning applications that will come in the future. That is when a lot of the issues that have been picked up around areas such as archaeology and transport and so on will come through at that stage. So I actually think that the Heathlands SPD as it stands is a genuinely visionary document. I think it is really very good, having read it from cover to cover several times. And I hope that the planning applications that follow respond and live up to the quality of the SPD. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Karen or William, did you want to add anything to that?
Just very briefly, I think. Obviously, just to mention, we've obviously had formal consultation, as you know, on this document. We received 58 responses to the Heathlands SPD document itself. As a result of that, we've made over 50 changes to the document, and in addition to that, we've also got the urgent update paper that's been circulated, which adds further changes to the SPD. So we have made quite a number of changes to provide clarity to the SPD document and to add some additional information to plans, for example, again, to add clarity to help future planning applicants. Just wanted to pick up briefly on the archaeology point that's been made, and I know it was mentioned at the last session as well. We obviously responded to the pack to all of the previous comments that you made, which reiterates the letter you've sent today. In terms of archaeology and heritage, as you say, it's more pertinent to the planning application stage, but the SPD does specify that future applicants are required to undertake archaeological impact assessments and heritage impact assessments as part of their planning application, and that is the stage when you would do that. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Tony, you've obviously proposed it. I'm going to second from the chair. Just before I bring you in, Clive, a couple of bits. Oh, we've got visiting members. Ah, yes, of course. Thank you, Cassie. Mr. Povey, Councillor Povey, would you like to come up and speak? Apologies.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, Cabinet. Good evening, officers. Unfortunately, my two fellow ward councillors, Houlihan and Nedell Cheever, are both dealing with family emergencies, but I know they would have been here tonight to speak if it were possible. I must, of course, recognise the hard work and dedication put in by Karen Britton and her team in producing and reviewing the SPD. My opinion that it remains not ready for adoption bears no reflection on the ability of officers to carry out the work, but I believe reflect on the purpose of the document not being absolutely clear and its targets therefore not crystallised. We have heard many concerns over the lack of detail, calling for a master plan, design codes, as well as details and commitments to provide infrastructure. Too many responses refer back to the local plan or forward to outline planning applications, making the limited value of this document clear, and its adoption, therefore, little more than a meaningless box-ticking exercise. One resident referred to the SPD as a woolly wish list, and that is very difficult to disagree with in its current state. Lenham currently contains 1,700 or more houses. This development will effectively quadruple its size. That's a massive development and will completely change the nature and character of this beautiful and well-known medieval village. This SPD is promoted on the basis of minimising the impact on Lenham and its existing residents, but lacks sufficient detail to achieve its stated objectives. When the SPD was submitted for consultation and such concerns were raised, a Cabinet member said that it wasn't the starting point that was important, but rather its state at the point of adoption. This has now been watered down to a bad SPD is better than no SPD. When the local plan was reviewed, viability was described as marginal at best by the inspector, yet this SPD does nothing to establish further the viability nor sustainability of the proposal. To spend approaching £8 million of public money without ascertaining and underpinning viability and sustainability can only be considered as irresponsible. We are told that Heathlands is unstoppable, yet viability and sustainability have not been established, demonstrated, nor underpinned. This leaves the Council in a very dangerous and invidious position in pursuit of its reckless, unnecessary and egregious assault on the Garden of England's countryside. KCC is a statutory consultee and has raised significant concerns over highways and transportation, heritage, minerals, waste and flooding. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, KCC went as far as claiming that the SPD wasn't sufficiently detailed to allow it to carry out a detailed enough analysis. I do hope that during the following debate, the matters raised by KCC will be adequately debated in good faith, with a commitment to provide a full response to KCC, together with an action plan to mitigate all risks, which it will then be made publicly available. This administration has missed a considerable opportunity to develop and tighten requirements further from the local plan, and which can be built further on in an outline planning application. No clear targets were set for what this document must achieve. The clear lesson that must be learnt from this is that if you aim for nothing, you will hit it with amazing accuracy. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Povey. Okay, right. So a couple of points from me before I open it up. I'll come to Clive and then Mike. Obviously, we've had a letter from KCC or two, and I believe that they broadly cover the things that they submitted in the consultation, so we've covered those. I mean, to pick up on Councillor Harwood's point, you know, that as we know, there is a lack of understanding around what the SPD does and doesn't do. We heard Councillor Povey talking about things being pushed back into the LPR or forward into the OPA. Well, yes, because they're things that are dealt with by other documents. So it is perfectly reasonable to say they're dealt with by other documents. Just want to say the train station is baked into the local plan review, and so it will have to happen. And the choice, obviously, tonight is we either have an SPD or we don't. We can't stop the development, but we can make it an exemplar, as Councillor Harwood said. So do we want a bad development or do we want a good development? Well, I think that's the choice. So I'll come to Councillor English and then Councillor Summerskill.
I've seen a lot of planning documents in my long years as a borough councillor, and before that when I worked as an officer in another local authority elsewhere in Kent. The good, the bad, the indifferent. I have to say, this document started out as pretty indifferent. However, a lot of work has been done on it, and I actually think that it's not a bad SPD. It's not a case now of having a bad SPD or no SPD. It has significantly improved. There's been a lot of, as Head of Planning mentioned, a lot of the points that have been made both by the general public, by stakeholders, and indeed by members of this council have been taken on board. Where I think we still have an issue is with the understanding of what an SPD is. Some of the issues, the core issues of whether this is a development that should happen was considered at the local plan inquiry. I wasn't particularly happy with the outcome, but it was the outcome, and the inquiry examination inspector made that choice. He then said there has to be an SPD. We have a potential SPD. Not having that SPD, because of the wording he's used, has led some people to conclude that if we don't have the SPD, we don't have that allocation. But actually, unfortunately, his experience has shown, for example, with the non-delivery of highway mitigation in most of the Maidstone in terms of all the other housing allocations, the refusal of another authority to provide the infrastructure that is committed to in a local plan doesn't necessarily mean that you don't get the development. It just means you don't get a very good development. The next confusion is that a lot of people have, with the best willing intentions, have assumed that the SPD should be covering things that are actually the purview of an outline or a full planning application. And it's very easy to confuse those two things. And let's be fair, there are some that could go in either column, that could actually be approached either way. So there is some overlap, so you can understand why there might be some issues there. However, most of the issues that are in the County Council's letter, which I've just glanced back over again, I had seen it before, that remain to be decided are issues that should be dealt with by the very comprehensive planning application, which will still have to be submitted, including many of the issues around viability, which will need to be measured. And just because the SPD has been approved or not, as the case may be, that does not mean that the planning application can fall down and just rely on something that's been said. It's still got to meet all the relevant tests of a competent planning application. I wouldn't have, like the Irishman giving directions, I wouldn't have started from here, but we are where we are, and I think as councillors and officers we've made the best of the job that we were faced with, and I cannot see that an alternative course of action actually exists. So without any great enthusiasm for the entire project, will support the SPD, because I think it has actually turned out to be a reasonably good document.
Thank you, Councillor English. And yeah, I must say I'm quite taken aback by the lack of understanding that KCC have shown over what an SPD is and what it isn't, as demonstrated by the letter. I think they might need to do some of our planning training, maybe. Councillor Summerskill.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, as we know, this scheme was set in train by the previous administration and the local plan that was approved, and several of us were not party to most things that were going on there, apart from as residents. Can I just get some confirmation that what the inspector said in the local plan, what he recommended, and have we covered everything that the inspector required us to do as a council?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good question. I personally went through the recommendations from the inspector back in the summer, and we'd already covered every single one of them by then. I'm pretty certain I wrote to a number of people about it, and so as far as I'm concerned, we have. I will look to Karen, though, who will confirm or deny that. Not my writing to somebody, but the fact that we've covered all the inspector's recommendations.
Yes, the inspector's recommendations are something that we, in our processes of planning, we have to take those on board in order to create the main modifications to the local plan that were dealt with at that time. So all of his recommendations were taken through the main modifications, so that's where that sits, and then we obviously move through that to the adoption of the local plan, so they've all been through that process.
Thank you. You want to come back?
I can, yeah. And just in our guide, it was saying that we created SSG, including representatives from various bodies. Did the inspector define that, or did we define who formed part of the stakeholder steering group?
In terms of the stakeholder steering group, the inspector didn't specify who we should involve as part of that. That was our decision as a council.
Thank you. Did I see Councillor Harwood? Did you? No. Okay. Councillor Wales.
Thanks, Chair. As I see it, as a non-planner, the SPD gives us a framework for planning applications to stick to. It's not a planning application. We have had no planning application. This isn't a planning committee to decide the value of the development, but for us to have any say in what goes into that planning document, then or planning application, then this sets the framework and sets the guidelines for that, as far as I see it. And I think without that, we'd be in a much weaker position if a planning application came in and we didn't have this to fall back on to say no because it doesn't comply with the SPD. So without the SPD at all, and if we didn't pass it tonight, we wouldn't have one. Without the SPD, we would be in a much worse position. Lots of things have been talked about which I think would come out in the planning application when it gets to the planning committee, and that's the stage where those things will be discussed in more detail.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Chairman. Infrastructure, local services, transport, water and sewage. We've spent little time talking about anything else. These are absolutely our priorities. They're the priorities that we got elected on. They're the priorities that we talked about in criticising the local plan as it was put when some of us were in opposition, and we've kept focusing on it ever since. One of our speakers asks us to reflect on the viability, deliverability and sustainability of the Heathlands allocation, and decries optimistic guesses. It really doesn't matter the size of the mandate on which I was elected. It doesn't matter the size of the mandate of those who come to criticise. And if we're going to talk about mandates, none of them were as big as Tom Sam's. But there we go. The real issue is how this document fits in the overall policy process. And it has taken me a considerable time to understand its proper place in the policy process. There is no point, there is no benefit to residents, there is no benefit to our collective future if we refuse to learn the lessons about how the system actually works. And I won't repeat the points that my colleagues have made about this. It is inappropriate to point the finger, in this case, at MBC as the joint promoter and planning authority, as though that somehow puts us on a hook to be accused of mendacity of our own in this regard. If we're looking for certainty, clarity and honesty, then we certainly need to pause on the comment that was printed in a newspaper this week that suggests that this SPD is a rushed exercise to get this SPD adopted come what may. Well, it turns out that there's a great deal of truth, ironically enough, in that statement, because if it isn't passed by June, we will discover that a bad SPD is not worse than no SPD. No SPD will be very, very much worse indeed. So there is the certainty, there is the clarity, and there is the honesty. We need to be looking at the previous leader of this council, who said to a resident in the Heathlands area walking their dog not so long ago, defending his decision, the houses have got to go somewhere. And as the dog walker put it to me, reflecting on this afterwards, that somewhere was a place called Not Marden. The reality is that it is governments, the previous government and this government, that is trapping us in a handcart on the way to what Councillor Harwood describes in his favourite pejorative terms. I'll let him use his phrase if he wishes to. The real issue is that we have a system, we have a framework in which our policy has to work that is committing us apparently to 1.5 million homes by the end of this Parliament, a legacy of trashed environmental regulations and the prioritisation of extractive economic growth. These are the things that we said when we got elected. These are the things that we've had in mind while we've been designing this and other SPDs, which are small jigsaw puzzle pieces in a very large picture. And I am pleased and compliment my colleagues, yourself, and our hard-working officers in producing this document in a ridiculously short period of time, as it turns out, in the nick of time. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson, and I'd just like to point out that the size of one's mandates is immaterial. I got one vote. I've won elections by one vote. Doesn't matter. Right, I can't see anyone else indicating after my comment, which I hope is taken in the right way. Tony's proposed it, I've seconded it. Are we agreed? Fantastic. That is agreed. So that moves us on to item 20, which is the Lidsing Supplementary Planning Document. Spencer, you have indicated to speak again on this one. Would you like to come up? And again, I'm assuming you're speaking as, oh, you could be speaking as either, couldn't you? So perhaps you'd like to tell us on what, on which one, or both.
Thank you very much, Chair. Again, so I am speaking as the member for Maidstone Rural North. Obviously, this impacts directly in my area. We've been over this a couple of times, so I will keep it fairly brief. The main issue we have is assurances regarding to M2 Junction 4. Again, to read from the document, because I know we noted that some improvement has happened. But we previously said that the issue of whether the M2 Junction 4 spur is delivered is of importance to County Council highways on the basis that the SPD identifies interim measures such as the apparent utilisation of local road network. And the SPD states that no further work on this large-scale scheme for the M2 Junction 4 has been undertaken or will be for the foreseeable future because it is considered at odds with vision and validate/monitor and manage approach is to planning. This is a concerning approach, and effective planning ahead should not be set aside. Given that the M2 Junction 4 spur is large scale and is stated as an essential part of the network proposals for the Lidsing Garden community, it is very high risk to not undertake suitable planning and design work to establish the impacts, costs and deliverability of the spur. And the County Council does not consider that this issue has been appropriately addressed in the amended document. But again, I come here as the member for Maidstone Rural North, so my plea is as well, as this kicks off, to consider Bredhurst and Boxley. They are going to be very vulnerable to the side effects, not just of the finished development, but also of the process as it is built. Once the building starts, their streets can be bombarded with construction vehicles. I simply ask that this is given consideration and that residents are protected as best as possible from the consequences of that. And that will be my lot. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Spencer. Okay, Councillor Harwood, would you like to introduce, and then I will come to our visiting member?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Again, for brevity's sake, I think we've done what SPDs are several times. Again, the local plan inspector and local plan review inspector required the delivery of a supplementary planning document and set quite clear parameters for that delivery, which we have delivered with the help of stakeholders and representatives of local communities through a steering group. That document that was delivered as a draft went out to consultation. We received 45 responses from statutory consultees and some other interested parties, and have responded to those. In many ways, I think this document was perhaps more difficult than the Lenham Heathlands because it is of the constraints of the site with its proximity to the national landscape and other considerations, and the fact that actually we know we are competing against a preordained delivery plan for when the planning applications and so on are coming in. So I think we have been up against the clock in a very significant way. That said, within the very significant constraints that we worked, I think we delivered something that we can certainly live with here. And to that end, there is a further raft of urgent updates that have been distributed, which need to be incorporated into the recommendation. So I therefore move that the Lidsing Garden Community Supplementary Planning Document, Appendix 1, with any additional amendments proposed resulting from the additional 2-week focus consultation as appropriate, supported by the Transport Annex, Appendix 2, and Statement of Consultation, Appendix 3, be adopted, and 2, delegated authority be given to the Head of Planning and Economic Development to make minor graphic, layout or editorial amendments prior to final publication. I therefore move. Thank you.
Thank you, and you included the urgent updates in that motion, didn't you? Good. Karen, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Only very minor. I think you've been very comprehensive in your introduction. Just to say, again, in terms of numbers of responses, you've already covered that, but I think as a result of those responses, we've made over 70 changes to this document, and then in addition, we've got the further urgent update paper changes on top of that. So we have made quite a number of changes to the Lidsing SPD as well, and that's all I wish to say.
Thank you. Councillor Jones, as visiting member, would you like to give us your thoughts?
Thank you, Chair, members and officers. As you all know, I've been working with Lidsing Garden Development for a very long time. It's been 6 years of non-stop work, first fighting the selection of Lidsing, raising money to oppose the scheme, and then taking Bredhurst Parish Council's fight to the High Court to try and show that the plans for Lidsing were not sound. Sadly, once the Conservatives voted the local plan through in March 24, just before they were voted out, that sealed the fate of Lidsing. When this administration came to power, the first thing we did was to try and undo what they had done, but we quickly learned it was not possible. So for that reason, we have worked tirelessly with officers to proceed with the SPD. With my fellow ward councillor Steve Thompson, we have tried hard to make the SPD fit for purpose, to add more detail to the local plan. We've done our best to make a positive difference, and now we wait for the planning applications to be submitted if all the pain of the last few years was worth the effort. I want to thank the officers for their diligence and in undertaking this very difficult task, and for your support and help. I think the difference with Lidsyn as opposed to Heathlands, I have come forward, and so has Councillor Thompson. Instead of just complaining about Lidsyn, we have come forward with tangible amendments that have been considered and hopefully been taken on board. That to me is the difference between the two. Unless you actually come forward and suggest alternatives for consideration, it's no good just saying we don't want it. But that's the difference between us and Lidsyn. The detail and the design of the infrastructure is a matter for the outline planning application. It's not appropriate at this stage of the SPD, and I think other comments that have been made as to the understanding of what the purpose of an SPD is, perhaps that's the crux of the matter. People have to understand what an SPD does, but now we're moving forward to the outline planning application process if it is passed tonight. Thank you, members.
Thank you, Councillor Jones, yes, thank you for your help in shaping the SPD, and Councillor Compton's help too, the suggestions were all fantastic. I'm going to bring Councillor Thompson in first before he recuses himself from the rest of the debate. Councillor Thompson.
It seems that I have had greatness thrust upon me again, Mr. Chairman. Speaking of which, you'll bear with me, please. I have a direction. I was at the Young Artist Awards at Maidstone Museum with the Maidstone Museum Foundation volunteers yesterday evening for a most grand event. The Young Artist Awards boast 50 splendid pieces of work that I commend to everyone in the chamber and everybody listening. A particular piece caught my eye. You have a choice, you have a voice. It's not too late to change our fate, protect our planet, save our future. Young Annabelle Farmer was aged 7 when she decorated the resin letters of this piece of work, each decorated to make a point that each part of nature of which we are part matters, that we work to preserve it, that we work together against climate change and other threats to our local and global environment. I rather thought that it neatly summed up all of my motivations, and asked the family's permission to quote her work this evening. To reach elsewhere, it says somewhere that even a fool is considered wise if he keeps silent. I'm afraid I'm not wise enough to follow such advice, so I'm going to talk for a little bit longer. I had this from our council when I was first elected in 23, and I've been reusing it ever since, although it doesn't have quite the right words on it, to represent Detling and Thurnham, and if you'll forgive me, members, I worked hard to get to that seat and to this one, and indeed gave up a great deal to be able to sit with my colleague here earlier who mentioned the importance of house building, home building and rebuilding lives. I've learnt much in planning committee about how the planning system actually works for all its foibles and difficulties, and indeed this position has also took me to the Intergovernmental Science Policy Panel on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services in Manchester last week, where I got to do something vaguely significant in putting together a piece of work which speaks to the higher level of our ambitions. The reason that we're here today, Mr. Chairman, with this particular supplementary planning document in front of us for Lidsyn is because of a combination of political choices made in that spectrum of options, starting at Westminster and in Kent County Council and in Maidstone. Those political choices combined with the work, the hard work, the dedication, the service of our officers, significant members of whom I'm delighted to see are with us in person here this evening. Partly directed, they and their predecessors, partly directed by the political choices of our predecessors and in little part by us. But at this stage, the SPD stage, we have had a limited number of options to exercise. And in that process, I have done my best to pester and cajole, and I would like to reassure the officers opposite that their certificates for surviving Councillor Thompson's emails are in the post. I thank them for their forbearance. We had a letter from Kent County Council in this chamber in March 24, which was a surprise to some people. I have to say it is a surprise, an unpleasant surprise, to get a letter today from Kent County Council because unlike our predecessors, the door has been open to dialogue. Mine has certainly been open. I was aghast to discover that the predecessor to Mr Dixon didn't attend a single one of the stakeholder steering group meetings that were held for the Lidsing development until the May election. We have seen his predecessor at rather more meetings, not difficult to exceed a target of 0. Councillor Jones and I took Mr Dixon. He was kind enough to join us on a tour of Lidsing, where we wasted no time whatsoever in bringing Kent County Council representatives up to speeds on what we saw as the challenges, as Councillor Jones has said, to be embraced. We had a choice whether to go for best practice, whether to try and fix things that other people had broken, and to engage without fear or favour with all stakeholders. That's what we did. So it is with regret that we have such a late item on the table here today, which doesn't reflect the contribution made by Kent County Council in the public consultation. Mr Dixon was kind enough to obtain an early copy of that and shared it with us, and these remarks were not in that document. We worked hard to get engagement at Boxley Parish Council in the SPD public consultation, to take note of all stakeholders, including Kent County Council, in that process. Mr Chairman, to wrap up, I would make a bigger fool of myself if I was to say all of the things that I'm thinking at the moment, but I will restrain myself because it is not over. We're going to pass this motion today. We're going to put this piece of work with thanks and regrets in measure. And I thank the County Council representatives being here today because we're going to continue to need your cooperation and assistance. We need to make it work. So we trust that we will be able to work with each other because that is the only way that we're going to get benefits for this community. Thank you, Mr Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. You're obviously going to step out for the rest of the debate and the vote, but thank you for your points. Councillor English and then Summersgill.
I don't disagree in principle with the remarks made by Councillor Dixon. In fact, Councillor Harwood and I raised exactly those points at the in terms of the model that was being proposed for analysing highways impacts at the examination in public. So the question was considered by the inspector at the examination, and he very clearly ruled out the historic predict and provide model, which understandably Kent County Council were most upset about. Then County Councillor Hodson, former County Councillor Hodson had raised similar points about a previous local plan, and we saw Councillor Carter, as he then was, come to this local examination to raise points on this particular allocation. We having had the inspector's decision that was the way that the highway impact would be assessed, are unable, unfortunately, to go back and revisit that, much though I personally would have preferred to take that approach. We simply unable to do that. And Kent County Council, myself, Councillor Harwood and others were in agreement that that's how it should have been done, but we cannot do that because we were very clearly directed by the inspector not to.
Thank you. I share your concerns. Monitor and manage doesn't seem anywhere near as good as predict and provide. Councillor Summersgill.
Thank you. I think it's a fairly simple question on the urgent update. We've got 5 items there. Items 2 and 4 seem to suggest that we would get an answer from the relevant Highways Authority and write it up in the next 2 weeks. With my parish hat on dealing with road safety and traffic, if they could advise me which KCC Highways person responds within 2 weeks, I'd be very pleased to take their name. Thank you.
Yeah, fair point. I mean, I think this basically gives Karen the opportunity to get those responses and add them in. Karen, did you want to add anything to that response?
No, I think we've taken on board some of the suggestions, obviously, from the last PAC meeting, and we have put forward some proposed amendments as part of this, which includes some adjustments to some of the text in relation to these particular aspects. We did have one response back from KCC, actually, so Brendan did actually respond to us on that particular item, but we have incorporated changes based on information that we've received, and we have put those forward as part of the proposed urgent update sheet.
Thank you. Councillor Wales.
At the risk of repeating myself from the comments on the previous one, I shan't say that, but I would like just to commend the elected representatives for the area for their constructive attitude and for creating a document that will carry some weight when it goes to the planning, through the planning process. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wales. Yes, absolutely. Good. I think everyone's spoken. It's been proposed by Councillor Harwood, seconded by Councillor English. Are we agreed to adopt per the motion? Agreed. Fantastic. Item 20. Oh, can someone go and grab Stephen? Yeah. There's a motion here to leave him outside by Councillor English. Is that seconded? I'll second it. Unfortunately, I think the motion fails. I can't see anyone else wanting to support it. Stephen, you're allowed back in. We tried to vote you out for the rest of the meeting, but the motion fell. Yeah. Welcome back, Councillor Thompson. Item 21 is the Heritage Interpretation Project. Over to you to introduce it, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will be brief. I frequently jest with my history teaching colleagues that they signed up for the wrong gig because there's more work to do every day they come to school. It is, of course, a delight. It has been, as I said, I was at the museum yesterday where the Maidstone Museum Foundation volunteers are present. I'm seeing them again in the morning. We are looking forward to updates from our consultant on the development plans for the museum, and these are all of a piece with the Heritage Spaces Interpretation Project. As colleagues, officers and others will know, I'm a big fan of synergising small ingredients to get out more than we put in, and that is absolutely what we're aiming for in the Heritage Interpretation Project. We have a headline focus on the river frontage, the museum and Brentsley Gardens area, the Gabriel's Hill and Jubilee Square focal point, and of course the Archbishop's Palace, All Saints, and the as yet under-celebrated second best carriage museum on the planet. All of these things are going to get much more attention in the very near future, and as members will know, we're looking forward to an excellent creative period of imagination and celebration to come through our consultant partners, and we will quickly have things that we'll be able to bring to members and to you for your attention in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Are you proposing per the papers on page 8?
Certainly am.
Excellent. And Clive seconding it. Sorry, Simon, he beat you to it. You'd like to speak? Okay, I'll come to you next then.
I think this is quite an important document, and I think it's a very useful way of us marking out Maidstone as an important place, particularly with the future under local government reorganisation. There are a number of pictures in here which are very attractive, I suspect, in the places for which they were designed, but I hope they're just examples of what can be done, and that we end up with something much more Maidstone focused than these sorts of things. So I would like it. Obviously, it's got to be an opportunity to celebrate our Maidstone's heritage with appropriate designs. Perhaps coming through the local community would be good.
Thank you. I'll look to Mr. Green to answer that particular point.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Wales. The pictures were really just to give members an idea of what heritage interpretation looks like, because it's a bit of a vague concept, but I absolutely take on board what you say about making sure that the interpretation is Maidstone specific, and Natalie Moore and I are very keen to do that in taking the project forward.
Thank you, Mr. Green. Simon, just to correct you, you said Maidstone as an important place. Maidstone is the most important place, just to point that out. I've got Clive, Dave, and then Tony.
Some of the examples that do appear in this document in relation to Maidstone, which both Councillor Harwood and I have had some involvement in, including the much loved Nolan Memorial statue, and other pieces of history around this symbolic representation of the county councillor outside County Hall, and many other pieces, including the War Memorial in Brenchley Gardens, which was put in relatively recently, for the War of the Three Kingdoms, which so we have a lot of history in Maidstone. There is a lot more history that could be commemorated. Some of the commemorations in the past have not been successful, like some of the stones in the town centre, which rapidly degraded. Some of the, but we have opportunities here to help build, not create, because there is already some legacy having been created of one kind or another, but to further expand on our legacy. And if Maidstone is going to have an economic future, or certainly both the town centre and also, I think, some of our significant rural areas that also have culture should be looked at, and heritage should be looked at. This is about the town centre at the moment, but going forward, if we have a successful strategy, I think there are parts of Maidstone, like Bearsted, that have a very significant cultural history where we should actually be looking to extend such projects. If you think of the sheer number of novelists and poets that lived and worked in and around Bearsted, just to take one random example, it's quite impressive. So this is for the town centre, and we should be doing it, but let's not forget that as we move forward, whether it's Maidstone or the future Unitary, that we're a whole borough, and there are many other parts of the borough that could benefit from this approach.
Thank you, Councillor English. The history in Maidstone is just amazing, isn't it? I've got Dave, then Tony, and then Mike.
Thank you, Chairman. On page 853, it says 3 heritage spaces have been identified, but on page 857, there's a list of 4. Is there... am I missing something there?
Yes, 3 of these will be told.
It's 3 out of 4, is it? Right, thank you.
Mark, do you want to just respond to that?
Yes, the intention was originally that there'd be 3, but we will look at actually commemorating 4.
Then Tony?
Yeah, thank you. And I do think that Maidstone can be accused of hiding its really very significant history under a bushel. This always concerns me that people just do not know. And I think we've gone some way to reminding people about essentially some really fundamental international as well as national history that's come out of Maidstone. And I think the Mantellisaurus atherfieldensis that meets you when you get off the East Station, which really was, that is the first dinosaur. And in terms of its framing by Gideon Mantell. And the quality of installations such as that actually do connect people, and people genuinely love but learn from these points. And we talked about the Louis Nolan installation outside the old ophthalmic hospital in Limehouse where he actually lived. Again, that is, it is both a thing of beauty, but also people stop and read the inscriptions, which again has a poet with links to my ward, to Park House in Tennyson. And I think that what I'm trying to say is that less is sometimes more. And I think that if we have got a finite amount of money there, a very good installation that lasts and is powerful in its impact is perhaps worth a lot more than a more dispersed and scattered approach. So as a kind of basic principle. And I think one of the things which defines Maidstone is its rebelliousness. And like Thomas Wyatt, Jack Cade, John Ball, all of those individuals have very strong associations with Maidstone. And it goes further than that. We talked about the villages. I mean, Simon de Montfort, as he was kind of anglicised, I mean, he was born in France, so he was probably Simon de Montfort. But, he lived in Sutton Valence, and he nearly overthrew King Henry III. That Barons' Uprising was, a very significant civil war. Even our battle during the Battle of Maidstone was during the Great Rebellion, the Second English Civil War. And again, it was fighting against tyranny that was put in place under the kind of Puritan Taliban that was ruling over the country. And I think we need to be kind of brave in stating that. And it often kind of strikes me that other parts of Kent, they talk down on the kind of Dymchurch and so on, they talk about smuggling. Well, kind of because of the River Medway, Maidstone, the reason we had a lot of resources and things was because of the black economy, because of the money that was coming out of smuggling. We haven't got Gibraltar Lane and Pepper Alley and all the pubs which had back entrances that backed onto the riverside for no reason. And individuals like Flint Stacey and his daughter, Sophia, she was the muse for Percy Bysshe Shelley and some of his greatest poetry. So we really do need to nail this, and you can tell I'm quite passionate about this. But we really do need to kind of not make this. Frankly, I was a bit worried about we had a toffee factory and things like that. This is about kind of real epoch making and historically defining history. Basically because of the Battle of Maidstone and the battles up the road in Colchester. That's why a king lost his head. It's really fundamental to English history. Right, I'll shut up now.
And Irish and Scottish history.
No, indeed. Thank you, Tony. Mike and then Stephen.
Well, you wouldn't expect an engineer not to point out we ought to be looking at engineering history as well in the area. But very briefly, a couple of things. One of them, some of them evident, some missing now, buried. Mills, paper mills. We had 13 on the Lewes Stream. I don't know how many on the Len and whatever. We invented, Mr. Watman invented a paper that's the international standard that was invented here. Most of those mills are missing now, sadly, but there's an awful history behind there, and maybe the museum has got history on that. And the other is bridges, where perhaps Rochester Bridge Trust can help with their historical knowledge, apart from the medieval ones in the rural areas. Mr. Bazalgette of the famous Thames Sewer did the bridge across the town here, and what most people don't realise is the bridge across at Wateringbury is one of only 2 ferrocrete bridges that were built 110 years ago and still standing in Britain. So there are engineering historical heritages about, and people with knowledge of that as well.
Thank you. That's helpful. And then, so Councillor Wales first.
Talking of history in villages, there's stone from the Lewes stream, which is in the White Tower of the Tower of London. Has been identified as being there, Kentish ragstone. I won't comment on your earlier comment about Maidstone being the only place in the world. I'll just apologise for not having been here long enough to be personal friends with Iggy.
I'll introduce you sometime. Councillor Thompson.
On which point I would like to wash up on this item, Mr. Chairman, thanking Councillor Harwood for his PN to the River Medway and colleagues for mentioning other watery tributaries. This is precisely the vision for one of the 4 options to be celebrating the river frontage, the engineering, beer making, paper making and other activities, and we hope very much that these celebrations will be inclusive and wide-ranging in their references. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. You have just completed my history bingo that I was working through this evening by the inclusion of beer making. Right. Does anybody else want to speak? Tony.
Just very quickly, when we had Councillor Summersgill talked about engineering firsts, I want to stick up for my ward because Springfield Mill was the first successfully steam-driven mill, certainly in the British Isles and potentially in the world.
Thank you. And then I'm going to stick up for my ward and say the first hybrid vehicle in the world was built at the Power Hub, as it was, Tilling Stevens as it was, and Iggy, in my previous ward, was buried there. Right, let's not go on. We could do this all night. It's been promoted. I can't remember who proposed it. Stephen proposed it. Probably Clive seconded it. Are we agreed with the recommendations on page 854? Agreed. Thank you very much. Right, item 22. We're nearly there. Only a few more to go. That's the National Planning Policy Framework. Councillor Harwood, over to you.
A schedule of the latest proposed NPPF response. This is a really very significant document, not least because of the jeopardy that the proposed changes to the National Planning Policy Framework place over the already kind of imperfect democratic process around planning. This will, if delivered as stated, further centralise planning in a very significant way. We have therefore responded to that very significant jeopardy by putting together with officers, I think, a very strong narrative with a strong theme and thread running throughout the document around local input to the planning process to both achieve effective placemaking but also to deliver quality and, I think, to some respect, certainty in the planning process, which is what the government state they're trying to deliver. I am always concerned that when we have changes to the planning regime come through, they tend to be tested at inquiries for a very long time afterwards because of the vagueness, and I think that is another issue that we found in here. and our colleagues on the Policy Advisory Committee, they had a quite a long discussion trying to understand what the proposals on biodiversity net gain mean, for example. And it is not clear from the consultation document whether a local authority like us, which through reasoned argument and evidential underpinning has achieved 20%, whether if they introduce this new document in June, whether the 20% falls away and we become the standard 10%. And it is just not clear. And again, it's one of the things which we could end up having to test and appeal. So we have outlined a raft of proposals at Appendix 1, as I say, which I think are really quite strong now. I thank, again, the Policy Advisory Committee for their input, and I thank other colleagues for their input, and I thank the officers for a lot of meetings of me moaning and saying I want more in this and more in that, and I don't want any no comments and so on. And I think in the end we've got there, though it would be remiss of me not to have one more moan before we put this to bed. And at number 183A, which deals with biodiversity matters, in the second line it states, well, the whole line states, the council is concerned that long-established woodland that has been in existence since at least 1893, close bracket, I want to say after that, and chalk streams, and then in brackets, an internationally rare habitat, which they are, and then after that wording has been introduced, we need to change the is not recognised to are not recognised, and we also need to make sure that recognised is English and not American, dare I say. And then that continues, and feel that they should be added to the schedule of irreplaceable habitats. So with that very small change, and cognizant of Appendix 1 fully updated as it is, I will move that Maidstone Borough Council's draft response to the National Planning Policy Framework and Planning Changes Consultation, attached in Appendix 1 of this report with Tony Harwood's amendment, be approved for the submission to the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government, and 2, delegated authority be given to the Head of Planning and Economic Development to make editorial amendments prior to submission following feedback from this committee and Cabinet, and I also need to sign the covering letter. I hear the full move. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Are there any comments from the team other than a fulsome apology for using an American spelling?
We certainly apologise for the error in our ways. The government itself actually has, it's just been brought to my attention by Mr Gilbert, the government itself has also published a series of errata about the National Planning Policy Framework and Rider Planning Reform consultation as well. So they're trying to keep up with their own consultations and documents as we speak. But I think actually, overall, I would certainly commend this to members. It's a really comprehensive response, and we're really grateful for the input which we've received from members as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I've got a lot. Councillor English, then I'm going to work backwards up.
We can but hope, given the amount of time and effort, and thank you for that, that the officer team have put in with Councillor Harwood on getting a robust response to what was one of the most profoundly dispiriting, disappointing consultations I've ever seen from any government. And we've had successive governments that have failed to understand how local government works, how the development industry works, and how local planning works, and have tried to address all the problems that don't actually exist, whilst not addressing any of the ones that do exist. This is a lineal continuation of the approach taken in the Barker Review, which is basically make everything as cheap and remove all the quality as possible, and magically cheap housing will appear for the poor. It's rubbish. What we will get is more get-rich-quick developers getting executive homes built and no social housing being developed, and what housing is developed will be more on the American model of flimsy jerry-built constructions that wouldn't survive a bad snowstorm or heavy breeze. What we are seeing is a rapid race to the bottom in pursuit of rapid financial returns for people who give money to large political parties. And that's frankly what we see with this document. However, we must try, on behalf of the wider public interest, not just our constituents, but people who have not even been born yet, to actually preserve something good in the British planning system, in the hope that our comments are taken on board to some extent, or if they're not taken on board, that some future government will revisit this position and use comments that local government, not just ourselves, have put forward to try and rescue what's left to be rescued. Because frankly, what we're looking at is a horrifying mess, and it did not need to happen, but the government, if it ever had any principles, has completely lost them. But we must do what we can to try and remind them that governing is not about pleasing the people who give your party money.
Absolutely. I have a real problem with the corporate donations personally, but I do. Stephen, Mike. Simon.
Thank you, Chair. If I could draw officers' attention to page 7, while thanking Councillor Harwood and everyone for this excellent document, which I'm sorry that I haven't been able to completely digest. I'm also sorry that our guests have excused themselves, because the points that many of us were trying to make earlier about the understanding of the wide policy piece, to understand what all of the jigsaw puzzle pieces are, when it is that you have to speak to them, the opportunity that you must grasp at the time that it is offered to you, and that time with this document appears to be now. Councillor Harwood already already highlighted the no comment point. I'm looking at 28 on page 7. Councillor English anticipated my remarks on genuinely affordable housing for the people that actually need it. Can we please find a form of words to put in 28 other than no comment? I do realise that there is a compound sentence there that is addressing several different things, but is it possible, please, for us to address those points, picking up the things that Clive said, and pointing out that, as Councillor English says, there needs to be a sea change in attitude, motivation, and intent. Can we please address that in number 28? Thank you.
Thank you. Tony, are you happy to accept that tweak, that some wording goes in around affordable housing?
I thought that we had covered it. I think we've probably covered it in another question. Tom will know, but we can put it here. And there's a number of the points, a repetition, it seems, throughout the document, but Ms. Gilbert wants to come back, actually. He can perhaps explain.
Yeah, if you go to question 214, so it's quite near the bottom, that might address your concerns there. So it's question 214, which is page 40 of the urgent update. But if it doesn't address your concerns, obviously we can have a conversation.
Thank you. Let's assume that you'll work with a minor amendments if need be. Simon, do you want to come in on this point?
Particularly as we're on the housing thing now, 214 doesn't really cut the mustard, I'm afraid, because the whole point of having the 40% requirement on developments of affordable housing is that we end up with mixed developments, not that they can buy their way out of it, have their executive homes and bung their social and affordable housing somewhere else where they don't have to look at it. I really think we need to beef that up, and the fact that 28 just says no comment, I think that needs beefing up as well. And looking above in 213, it says partly agree, and then please provide your reasons, no comment. But if you partly agree, then surely you should say why you do. Or if it says particularly if you disagree, but if you partly agree, it says please say why you agree. I would suggest.
Okay, thank you. Mike.
Okay, thank Councillor Harwood for bringing 183A to my attention when adding chalk streams. Can the apostrophe police make sure councillors has got 2 L's in it on there? And
Tony missed that.
Tony, you missed it. My point was actually on 166, which is my special engineering skill. Contaminated land data. I think we just need to put 1 or 2 words in there. Better information on surface and groundwater quality or condition, and glass flaring from historic cast landfills, because information on surface and groundwater can be absolutely everything, but in contaminated land terms, it's the condition that we're worried about. So just sticking 1 or 2 words in there in 166 would help elaborate.
Thank you. Okay, Tony, I'm assuming you're happy that we can make some tweaks after this meeting, or we'll make the amendments to reflect that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think in a way, Councillor Summersgill, it is the quality and condition, and I think that does need to go on to the end. And I've just found a bit about the housing and the disposition within developments and strongly supporting pepper potting and so on. So, but perhaps we could need delegated powers just to officers to go through to really emphasise at every point we possibly can our strong policy support for the continued delivery of social housing at the maximum level. It is there. It's just on a lot of questions that are very similar, but I think it just, rather than using no comment, it just gives us another opportunity to ram home our position.
Lovely, thank you. Okay, Tony's proposed it, Clive I think seconded it. No one else seems to want to speak, so are we happy with that delegated comment to agree? Agreed, thank you. Right, moving on to Tony again, exceptional circumstances SIL paper.
Yeah, this is procedural really, that we need to amend our wording as can be seen. Essentially, the report starts at page 917, sets out the statutory process and considerations for introducing discretionary exceptional circumstances relief policy. And the recommendation is in accordance with regulations 55 to 57 of the Community Infrastructure Regulations 2010 as amended, the introduction of a discretionary SIL exceptional circumstances relief ECR policy be agreed in order to align the borough's adopted SIL charging schedule to the policy requirements for funding infrastructure for Heathlands, Lidzing and Invicta Park Barracks, as set out in the adopted local plan review, and subject to agreement of 1 above, the ECR policy is published in accordance with the SIL regulations 2010 as amended, with an implementation date of 20th of February 2026.
Thank you, Tony. You're proposing per the papers, clearly. Helen, we've got you on the screen. Is there anything you'd like to add in terms of the introduction? Thank you. I think I saw Councillor Wales indicate. Did you? No, didn't. Clive seconding it. Okay, I can't see anyone indicating, so we'll go straight to the vote then. No, Clive seconded it. Clive's always... Councillor Wales has seconded it. Gosh, they're fighting already. Okay, I can't see anyone indicating. So are we happy to agree per the papers? Excellent. Right. Item 24, Swale Borough Council Local Plan Reg 18 consultation. Tony, you again.
Right, thank you. Our report starts at page 929. Interestingly, because of the MPPF consultation, a lot of Swale's positions are a little bit moot and may well need to shift. So it's all that about certainty in the planning process. It's created an awful lot of uncertainty here. But we have set out our response to the consultation on the Regulation 18, consultation on the Swale local plan, and they are set out in detail on your papers from page 936. I think they are all fairly self-explanatory and make eminent sense. It's interesting that I think we were a lot closer to the Swale proposals for their local plan than perhaps we were for Tunbridge and Moorings. There was a clear difference between the two documents, with Tunbridge and Moorling being a bit more laissez-faire. However, I will move. What will I move? I move that we agree the letter and its contents set out on page 936.
Thank you, Tony. Any officers want to add anything? No? Okay. Stephen, you want to speak?
With my thanks and apologies in equal measure, Chairman. As you, as officers, are well aware, one of my two daily pincer manoeuvres is asking about best practice. And we've had many discussions over recent months on Lidsing and indeed Heathlands about best practice items from elsewhere in the country that we wish had been adopted by our predecessors and had been visited in their local plan, that we would have been able to swing off more influential and world-changing things in the SPD, but we could not. I would like to ask if there is still an opportunity for you to visit some of the learnings that we had from those conversations about, for example, North Stowe, Didcot and Cranbrook, and might bring those to the attention of our friends in Swale, since they may still be of some use to them. Thank you.
Would any of the planning team like to respond, or are you happy to accept that general suggestion? Yeah, okay. So yes, the answer is okay. I think Clive seconded this, didn't you?
Not, but I will.
Oh, thank you, Clive. Thank you for seconding it. Right, can't see anyone else indicating. So are we happy to accept per the papers the recommendation on 929? Lovely. And I really don't want to ever have to have 1,007 pages ever again. Okay, final item, and it's Dave. Pride in Place. Would you like to introduce this item?
Yes. The committee aware we've been given £20 million over 10 years for Parkwood and Seneca, and a bit of Shepway and a bit of Lewes creeps in there as well. So it's quite a good area which can be expanded, or wherever you are. You get a bit, don't you? Mangrave, yes, there you go. I don't know, it's because it can be extended once the committee get going on it. And it is, as I said last night, it's one of the best things I've seen in my time. A large amount of money over a certain time, and only the people that live there have a say, and no one can interfere, because usually Parkwood and those areas get an amount of money that someone's decided should be spent in a certain way, which really doesn't do anything. But this one is quite unique, really, where it has to be formed by the community. Everything will be spent by the community, and it's a bit of a rare thing in local government where that happens. So I'm very pleased to be part of it, and I've got the top team on it, because obviously, as everyone knows, you have to ask Angela for most things. And really, it went very well last night. PAC all agreed about it. The councillors all agreed it was very positive, and I think it's going to be very positive outcomes for all this area that is covered. Just wish it could have covered Maidstone a bit more. But you can't have everything in life. But really, this is a very good project initiative, and can't wait for it to get going. Thank you. Oh, I moved the recommendations on page 951 and 952.
Thank you, and I'll second those from the chair. Got in first. Angela, did you want to add anything? No. Okay. So I saw, in the order I saw them, was Stephen, Simon, and then Clive.
Chairman, I'm grateful and immensely proud to be the portfolio for healthy and stronger communities on Maidstone Borough Council. It was one of the best things that you helped us to hatch at the start of our term of office. I'm hugely grateful to Angela Broom for, did I get that right? Alison Broom, my apologies. Trying to make my mouth move as fast as my brain. There we go. Hugely grateful to Alison Broom for the very early tutoring, support and input on precisely what it is that we're about when we talk about the wider determinants of health. It is, as Councillor Nagy puts with such delight, brilliant to see this attention coming to this part of Maidstone. And I wanted to make this intervention to underline a particular point. Maidstone Borough Council has not done anything wrong. The reason that this funding is being earmarked by the government for these particular areas of particular need is because it was withdrawn previously. But that was the past. Here we are now. A mistake made by others is being put right. And Maidstone Borough Council, as Councillor Nagy has already pointed out, is blessed with a top team of people who have already built the strength and depth of wisdom to support, not interfere with, to support the interventions, the long-standing, long-lasting interventions that will outlast this council. And it is a particular delight to see Councillor Maureen Cleater's name mentioned in lights in this paper. She will clearly be a further asset to this project, and I'm delighted to join its commendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Councillor Wales.
First, I should declare an interest as a resident of the People's Republic of Shepway. But having lived there, it's clear to see that as an area that was just formed, but Shepway itself in the 1950s and then Parkwood and other areas have just been created without any sort of backup sort of infrastructure. Shepway did have pubs, but they all disappeared, so that even the social fabric isn't there anymore. There is no feeling of social cohesion, apart from the fact that we all complain about how awful the roads are, how little has been spent on maintaining them over the past 50 years. So I welcome this as a way of bringing the community together and creating something that hasn't formed itself naturally. So this could be an ideal opportunity to build that community resilience and to build some sort of social cohesion in the areas affected. And of course, it does include a little bit of man grab it, not lose.
Thank you. And Councillor English.
There are probably more building blocks of community cohesion in Parkwood and Shepway than some people realise. However, those are building blocks, and thing you have to do with blocks is put them together. My very first campaign standing for the Borough Council was in Parkwood, and I remember a resident, she must no longer be with us because she was quite elderly in the early 1980s, saying to me, the thing you have to remember is that people in Parkwood don't get to do, they have it done to them. And that is the feeling of residents in Parkwood and Shetway about a lot of things that have happened over the years. A quotation, a well-known novelist was once sent a manuscript by a budding, aspiring author, and he wrote back saying, "Your manuscript is both original and good in parts. Unfortunately, the parts that are original are not good, and the parts that are good are not original." This document is in many ways the antithesis of that, because it is both, it is original and good in parts, and the parts that are original are good, and the parts that are good are original. So it is good to see that the communities, I should say, because they're not one community, are going to have the opportunity to shape their own destinies with support. These communities do need support, but it's not unique to Parkwood and Shetway in that respect. Very few communities in Maidstone could shape their destiny without any support from external organisations, however well educated or well off they are. So there is an opportunity here, though, to build something, a legacy. We talk about legacies very often, but here we have an opportunity to not build it for someone, not tell them what to do, not dictate, oh, you're a poor and deprived community, so we know better for you, but to allow them to actually take control over their own destinies. And frankly, I think that can only be a good thing, because and it's not unique to this situation, because what a lot of people in this country, and which is one of the most centralised in the world in its governance, often feel is a lack of ability to influence their future. Even the strongest, most secure and well-educated amongst us often feel powerless to affect our destiny. So think how one feels if one is none of those things, but we can help the people of these communities change that, and I truly hope that we will do that.
Yeah, very well said. Yes, so thank you for the comments, everyone. It's good that we've got Maureen going to be sitting on that board. I think she'll be an absolute asset to it. Clive, you're right, there are some assets out there. I visited Fusion. The work they do is excellent. I went to the boxing club as well. That was really good. This is overall a brilliant thing for Maidstone. So, and as you say, building it from the ground up is it is an amazing thing to be able to see happening and to be able to facilitate. So I'm really pleased it's here. Dave's proposed per the papers, Clive seconded. Are we all in agreement? Excellent. So that's the last item. So I declare the meeting closed. Thank you, everybody.